Welcome to Reconnecting with Wholeness, the podcast where we dive deep into the messy, beautiful journey of coming home to yourself. I'm your host, Paige, and together we'll gently question everything, bringing you deeper into self-awareness, acceptance, and trust. So take a breath, settle in, and let's begin. Hello and welcome back. Today we are talking about safety, and we were talking about safety as it's important for the nervous system, for healing, and what are some maybe like dissonances that we have, and just overall why it's important. I think that safety is something that is often kind of underestimated. I've worked in a variety of different industries, and there was one in particular, and I was doing a lot of networking, and one of the common things, right, was people have to know, like, and trust you. And that's true. Also, part of that, and maybe it's part of the trust portion, but part of that is like they have to feel safe with you. And I think that that's even more true as somebody who does energy and healing work and in various, sessions, but if I'm doing like inner child work, for example, like safety is absolutely foundational. It's not an option, right? It's like we have to establish some form of safety between myself and the client in order for us to do the deep work that wants to really happen and take place. And I want to talk about this because not only is it important to healing, but it's also important to our nervous system. It's important to any of our up-leveling. It's important to why we say that we want change and then we don't feel like we can change, why maybe you don't trust yourself, why you can't just relax, all of those types of things, right? It's due to a safety issue. So I think one of the first things is understanding that the body has learned the world isn't always safe. And not just like the world, but also maybe that comes down to small things, right? I really like to take us out of this environment that we're in and the society that we're in and well, we know what's in our food. But there was a point in time, right, where we didn't know what berries were good for us. And so food wasn't safe, right? There was a time where trying to gather food might have put us in danger, and so collecting resources maybe wasn't safe. And this can all, like, just through generational trauma and the way that our bodies and intelligences work, right, all of this can be passed down. And so then it feels really weird, but it's like, oh, well, like collecting money and resources, right, doesn't maybe feel safe. And that's actually due to a learned adaptation, so to speak. So I think it's important to understand too that when we're talking about the nervous system in particular, our nervous system, I'm going to stay with our nervous system. Our nervous system is wired for survival. Every time it's wired for survival. And so if you don't feel safe, then it will choose survival over presence. It will choose survival over thriving. It will choose survival over joy. It will choose survival over you name it, right? Because like that is the purpose of the nervous system. That is the purpose of our body and our brain, is to make it through the day, right? So without that sense of safety, then you just continue to be in a survival mode. And it's not that mode is inherently bad, right? It's just something that I want us to understand, because if you're like, oh, I feel like I don't have joy, or I don't have presence, or I struggle to like stay grounded and stay in the moment, or I struggle to have the things that I want, then my question for you would be, are you in a place where you don't feel safe? And that can be caused by a number of things, right? We're not here to judge or shame any of that. Safety is relational, right? It's kind of subjective, like what makes you feel safe. And understanding what it is that makes us feel safe is going to be something that's going to be incredibly important as we continue to move on through our healing journey. So let's talk a little bit about like knowing something that's safe versus felt safety, because I think that sometimes we perceive safety as a logical thing, and really what we need to do is really embody safety. And what I mean by that is like bring it into the body. We need to feel that. We need to not just say like, oh, well, like I know my doors are locked and so I'm safe. Right? That's like a cognitive safety, right? Like I know my doors are locked and so nobody should be able to break in. Versus like, wow, I really feel safe in this home. This also can happen emotionally, right? Like, oh, like I know that this person isn't. I see this, I would say I see this a fair amount in like collective group spaces where the facilitator, in fact, actually, I've been in a collective group space. It's a free space right now. And I don't know, I just joined the space. And the facilitator made me feel safe, and I don't know any of the people who are in this. And so day one, she asked about something, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go all in. And it was a time where I was alone, and I just like allowed myself to really get in this flow and wrote out this whole thing and sent it into the group and called it a day, right? But like I'm willing to be emotionally open and vulnerable in front of a group of people who I don't know, where I feel like ultimately I have nothing to lose. And that's not everybody's level of safety. And so there were other women who were in the group who were saying that they, especially after like the challenge kind of had ended, like, oh, I'm realizing that I'm actually not as open as I want to be or feel like I can be. And again, this is where I say like safety is relative, right? Like just because I might feel safe to share a whole bunch of information and kind of my deepest, darkest secrets doesn't mean that everybody is going to feel safe in that same container, right? And somebody else might look at it and say like, wow, there's 50 people in this group. I don't want to air out my dirty laundry, right? And so I say that to say group spaces, I see it a lot where somebody might feel safe with the facilitator, but because there's other people around, maybe they don't feel as safe. Or once one person in that group is like, oh yeah, I feel X, Y, and Z, then you have like 3 other people who are like, oh my gosh, yeah, I felt that same way. So again, that happened to me in the group. I don't remember what the facilitator was asking about, but I ended up like having this light bulb moment click on for me, and I think it had been like a day had gone by between her posting and then nobody else in the group had said anything, and I was like, oh, I was just listening to this, like this light bulb moment clicked for me, and these are the things that I like am feeling, and these are the things that came up. And then after that, like 7 other people came into the group and were like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing it, like I feel the exact same way, right? So sometimes it just takes like one person to like break that safety, or bring that safety rather, like break that ice where everybody else is like, oh, okay, like I can also share. And sometimes like it's easier in a one-on-one setting, and sometimes like having that group of people who feel the same way feels even safer. So let's talk about some things that might look safe to you, but then like feel dangerous, right? So being vulnerable, right? That is a big one, I think, whether that's emotionally or speaking your truth. You know, sometimes like that can feel really scary for a variety of different reasons. Receiving is a huge one. Like, it's like, oh yeah, like who doesn't want to receive gifts, or who doesn't want to receive money? And then when you actually like have a family member or a friend or whatever who's like willing to do that, it can feel really dysregulating to the body. Resting, this is, I think, maybe not a huge one, but I see this a lot, where resting can feel like or be perceived as like laziness. And so it's like, oh well, like I didn't actually do anything. And we kind of have this like stigma around rest, and yet like that feels nice, right? I think that this is a big reason why people want to go on vacation, because vacation allows us to rest without that guilt, where then like you come home and you're like, oh, like I should, yeah, but like if we were just gonna do like a staycation, well, like I should still do the dishes or the laundry or clean the house, because like I never get to do these things, right? Where like when you go on vacation, you can, yeah, just like rest without guilt. Saying no can feel dangerous, right? That can feel dangerous for a variety of reasons. One, if you perceive the person who you're saying no to as a threat. Two, if they are maybe not even a threat, but just like an authority. If the person who you're saying no to, you think that that no might hurt their feelings, that's another reason why that might feel dangerous to the body. And then making more money. And I love this example because so many times we want to make more money, we want to have more, and then maybe we receive more, maybe we think about receiving more and we're like, oh, like I don't even know what I would do with that, right? That's a level of, I don't think unsafety is a word, but that's a level of danger, right? There's also this, at least for me, right? Like there's this connotation of like, oh, but like if I make more money, then like I have more to potentially lose. Oh, like, but if I make more money, now there's like pressure on me to continue making this amount of money to pay for the house that we have or pay for the things that we have, right? So that's another really great example of something that you're like, yeah, like I would love to do that. And in fact, like maybe even the idea of having slightly more money feels good because I want to pay all of my bills on time and I want to have more than enough and I want to be able to do these things. And then you get to a certain amount and like I know for me, I can feel it, and I can now because I've worked with my nervous system and my body. But now I can feel it where I'm like, ooh, like this number feels good. And then this number feels like, nope, like that's too much. I'm not there. I'm not ready to receive that amount yet. That starts to bring up fear and concern and danger and judgment for me. And so I invite you, if any one of these things like really resonated with you, right? Like just kind of play with that. Can you see where that like feel good on paper or that like looks good on paper, how that like sits with you, and then where in the body that starts to feel unsafe and or when it starts to feel unsafe, right? And so maybe it's like, yeah, like I feel really good telling my partner of X amount of years, like I love them, and that's the way that I can be vulnerable and it doesn't cause problems. But then when they ask me for my honest opinion about something and I think it's going to hurt their feelings, like now I start to have some sort of anxiety around it, or like now I start to not feel so great. So I think that's just what I want to leave you with as far as that part goes. So moving on from some of those examples, let's talk about like what actually creates safety, which can be a little different for everyone. Kind of like what somebody perceives as traumatic can be different for everyone. What somebody perceives as danger or threat can be different, right? This is, it's really individual is, I guess, what I want to say. So one of the first things, and I feel like this isn't something that like is often talked about. I mean, I think we talk about it in regards to kids, but that is the subject of co-regulation, and like really safety through connection, safety through somebody else and another person, right? And we kind of will see this with kids. We have some level of tolerance for it in terms of like, oh, okay, like my kid wants a hug, but this is also important for like us as adults, right? This idea of like, I'm going to use another person as my gauge for safety, right? So maybe this is a parent, maybe this is a partner, maybe this is a friend. In fact, I think, I'm gonna tell this story. I think even sometimes if we are just feeling like it's somebody else going through the same thing that we're going through, I did a contrast therapy session event a couple of weeks back, and it's the first time that I had done something like this, but we went in and they had saunas, they had 2 cold plunge tubs at 2 different temperatures, they had a hot tub as well as some like showers, some cold misters, some like these buckets that you like pulled a rope down and those were cold water. And that's supposed to be just like in general, contrast therapy is supposed to be really good for the nervous system. And where connection comes into play is because they had 2 cold plunge tubs, even though they were different temperatures, it definitely, like, there was this one woman who, she was in one tub and I was in another, and like we would talk and we would kind of go back and forth, and that did allow a level of safety, right? Like, even though she's not around me, we're not touching, because like we're able to have some sort of conversation, because at least for me, I can't speak for her, but for me, right, like her being in her little tub made me feel better about being in mine too, right? So that's another way that we can use co-regulation in a way that maybe we don't typically think of. And then also, I mean, that goes to like, you know, that's obviously like, that was a casual setting, but I mean, I've also been the person who, like, somebody was having a rough day and I like gave them a hug, and you know, I remember my coworker actually at the time being like, you just totally like co-regulated me, and like, thank you for that, that means a lot. So I think that's a big one. Now, I say that also knowing that not everybody is going to potentially like find comfort in somebody else being there, right? And so sometimes like we have big emotions and we're like, actually, no, like I want some form of space. Like, I don't want you to be here while I have that. And like, that's fine too. So then maybe through what I'm going to call like body practices, whether that's breath, whether that's focus, through choice. So knowing that I have an option, I can maybe set the pace. I can say no if something feels uncomfortable for me, right? So I don't mean to like, I want to get a little more tangible with some of these examples. So for example, let's say I'm having like this really big emotional response, right? I can potentially breathe through that, right? I can potentially say, I'm not ready to actually deal with this right now. I'm going to come back. And maybe part of that is because like, I don't feel safe to express that right now. So I also want to talk about this from like, maybe even something as like location. So for example, with me, like, I'm a person where I don't like to experience big emotions at work, right? Like, that is not the time or the place, in my opinion. Even before I was doing energy work, right? Like, that, if I'm just like in an office, like, I don't want to have big emotions there. And so for me, right, having the choice to actually say, no, I don't want to have this here is kind of a way of expressing safety. And I know that this kind of gets a little convoluted because somebody might be like, that's disassociation. But like, if I'm making the conscious decision to say like, this is not the place where I feel safe to do this, and so I'm going to hold and I'm going to refrain and I'm going to like think about this later at a time when I do feel safe to express that, right? That can also be a level of pacing or saying like, just a level of choice, right, that creates safety. And I also want to say, when it comes to choice too, like who you are expressing your emotions or your truth or whatever that thing is in front of, like that can also be like this really big form of self-trust, right? To say like, okay, like I don't feel safe to do this here, but like I am going to allow myself to like feel sad, or I am going to allow myself to like do this thing. And so like when I get home today, like I'm gonna have a good cry, or like when I get into the car, I'm gonna scream or whatever. But really like having that, building that relationship with yourself to say, okay, like I am going to tune in and say like I don't feel safe, so let's get myself to a safe place where then I can move forward to experience this. Smells can invoke a level of safety. I almost kind of want to say like certain things that like make you feel comfortable, but comfortable isn't really like the right word. So like, for example, I'm a person who like, I don't care whether it's hot or not. If I am having like a hard conversation, I probably want some sort of like pillow or blanket over me. Like it is this physical, almost like a physical barrier that makes me feel as though I'm able to emotionally connect with somebody. And so like I will do that a lot, even if it's just like I'll put a blanket over my feet. But things like that can help create safety. Maybe that's a level of privacy, right? Maybe that's, you know, how the lighting is, right? Like it's different than comfort, and at the same time, like comfort sometimes feels comfortable because there's a level of safety there, right? So this isn't like, oh, like I'm just gonna like put on my sweatpants because like these are comfortable, right? And I don't have to sit in discomfort. But it's like, what are those things that actually help you sit in that discomfort? What are those things that like help you speak your truth or have those hard conversations, right? Like that's what it is that we're looking for here. So also just take some time to like play with this and think about it and say like, oh, well, what has worked really well for me? And maybe you don't know. So go through some of those some of these like different ideas. And then the last thing that I want to kind of speak on as far as like something else that might create safety is awareness. Now this could be awareness about like our environment. This could be in terms of like hyper awareness of like orienting to now. This could be self-awareness of what it feels like inside, what's going on, naming it, kind of like walking somebody through a process. For me, I do a lot of like self-awareness work, but also I do my best expression after I've already been able to figure it out, right? So like I'm a person who I kind of process solo a little bit, and that can be like through writing, it can be through talking, it can be through various like conversations with myself, with ChatGPT, with friends, with journal prompts, right? Like there's a fair amount of different ways that can work. And then really the thing I want to like leave you with is just understanding that safety is the foundation. It's not a luxury. It's not the thing that creates coddling. It's the thing that creates healing. Yeah, so safety is a necessity, not just like a roof over our head, but in that we have to feel safe in our body, in our lives. And so play around with that throughout this week. Like what helps you feel safe, and what are some of those, whether it's connection or environment or smells, like what are some of those things that invokes that safety in you, and look at some of those things where you're like, yeah, I can see this, where this looks good on paper, but it doesn't feel safe in my body, right? And just kind of create that awareness. And with that, sending you all so much love today. Thanks for joining me today on Reconnecting with Wholeness. I invite you to take what resonated and explore how it shows up in your own life. Keep in mind, even the smallest shifts can spark transformation. If today's episode felt valuable for you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share it, leave a review, or connect with me on social media. Until next time, keep exploring, keep feeling, and keep reconnecting with the wholeness that's already within you. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.